Tonight, you fall asleep in a moving room. The engine hums somewhere below the floor. The water outside is black and endless, and you don't think about it twice. Because tomorrow, you wake up somewhere warmer, and someone you love is sleeping 20 feet away. That's the whole comfort of it, being watched over, being close enough to reach. For one family in March of 1998, that comfort lasted exactly one more night. Her name was Lynn Bradley, 23 years old, a recent college graduate, a trained lifeguard, a strong swimmer, the kind of person who noticed when something was wrong before anyone said it out loud. She hadn't wanted to go on this trip. Her father's company had given him the cruise as a gift, an all expenses paid week through the Caribbean, and Amy went along anyway because that's what you do for family. It's the last night. Deck 9, a ship called the Raspity of the Seas, docked just off the coast of Curaçao. Somewhere below, in the cabin, 2 doors from her parents, luggage sits half-packed for a trip that everyone still believes is only halfway over. Up on deck, there's a band playing. Amy is dancing. Her younger brother, Brad, is beside her. There's a bass player in the group, a local musician who goes by the name Yellow, and later footage from the ship's own cameras will show the two of them dancing together, laughing, nothing more than that. Around 1 a.m., Brad calls it a night. His sister stays a little longer. You know something Amy doesn't know yet? Standing on that dance floor. You know this is the last time anyone in her family will ever see her clearly. At 3:35 a.m., the ship's electronic keycard system logs Brad re-entering the family cabin. 5 minutes later, at 3:40, it logs Amy's card too. She's back. She's safe. But for a few more hours, the story is exactly as ordinary as it was supposed to be. Her father, Ron, wakes up around 5:30 in the morning, the way people do on ships, half from the light, half from habit. He glances toward the balcony. Amy is there, curled in a deck chair, asleep in the open air. It's believed she liked to fall asleep that way when she couldn't settle her thoughts, watching the water instead of the ceiling. Ron closes his eyes again. 30 minutes later, he looks again. The chair is empty. The balcony door is standing ajar. Her shirt from the night before is draped over the lounge chair, folded the way you fold something you intend to come back for. Her cigarettes and her lighter, the ones she never left the room without, are gone. And that's all. That's everything anyone in her family will ever be handed to explain what happened to Amy Lynn Bradley that night. Ron searches the common areas himself before telling anyone. 30 minutes, maybe more, walking corridors that all look the same, past a pool no one is swimming in yet, before he finally goes to the crew and says his daughter is missing. The ship's staff run a full search between roughly noon and 1 o'clock that day. Nothing. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard sends 3 helicopters and a radar plane across 4 days of open water. Royal Caribbean charters a private boat to keep looking after the official search ends, and nothing comes back. No body, no belongings, and no sign that anyone or anything ever went over that railing. Here's where the case should end, the way most missing at sea stories end. A tragic accident, a young woman, exhausted after a late night, leaning too far from a railing she had trusted 100 times already. Investigators considered it, and so did the ship's own crew, some of whom, according to later accounts, were instructed to describe her disappearance to worried passengers as most likely a fall or a jump. But Amy Lynn Bradley was a lifeguard. She spent years reading water the way other people read a room. And the ship that morning was close enough to land that falling wouldn't have meant vanishing. It would have meant a body, a recovery, an answer. But there isn't one. Why would a strong swimmer, trained to survive water most people fear, disappear in it without a trace? That question is what pulled this case out of the ocean and onto dry land, because within hours, 2 women aboard the ship came forward with something the Bradley family wouldn't hear about for a long time. Around 6 that morning, after Ron had already noticed his daughter missing, the women say they saw Amy in an elevator beside her, the same bass player she'd been dancing with hours earlier. 15 minutes after that, the women say they saw him again, alone. The FBI questioned him, and his polygraph came back inconclusive. No charges were ever filed. It's a detail the family has never been able to let go of, and one of the investigators have never been able to fully close the door on it either. Weeks later, Amy's father and brother returned to Curaçao, and were approached by a taxi driver. He described a barefoot young woman, matching Amy's description down to the color of her eyes, running through a parking lot searching for a phone. He said he'd seen her more than once. 5 months after that, in August of 1998, two tourists on a beach in Curacao reported seeing a woman with the exact same tattoos as Amy: a devil with a basketball on one shoulder, a sun on her lower back, a small lizard near her navel, and one of them would later say he was 100% certain of what he saw. In the years that followed, a Navy service member reported meeting a woman in a bar who told him her name was Amy Bradley and that she was being held against her will. None of these sightings have ever proved anything. None of them has ever fully been disproven either. This is where a case like Amy's runs into the limits of what the human mind actually does with a missing face. Memory researcher Elizabeth Loftus spent decades studying how eyewitnesses' accounts shift and reconstruct themselves after the fact, especially when a face has already been circulated on a poster, a news segment, and a rewards flyer. The brain doesn't retrieve a memory the way a camera retrieves a photograph. It rebuilds one every time out of expectation as much as observation. A missing woman with a widely published photograph becomes statistically one of the easiest faces in the world to think you've seen. That girl doesn't mean every sighting was wrong. It means no one can say with certainty which ones were right. In 2010, 12 years later to the day after Amy disappeared, a human jawbone washed ashore on a beach in Aruba. Investigators initially connected it to different, unrelated missing persons case from the same region. They declined to run DNA tested against Amy's family for comparison. No remains linked to Amy Bradley have ever been recovered, examined, or ruled out. FBI Special Agent James Weber, who worked the case for years, put it plainly. "We pursued every angle," he said, "from whether there was a foul play, a suicide, and every other possibility investigators could think to chase. None of them ever closed a file." It's what the National Center of Missing Adults has pointed to for years as one of the defining frustrations of cases like this one. A disappearance at sea sits in jurisdictional gap. No single country, no single agency owns the case the way land-based investigations are owned. The water erases jurisdiction the same way it can erase evidence. Amy's brother Brad has spent decades pushing back against the simplest explanation, the one the crew offered his family that first morning. She just graduated, she had a new job waiting, a new apartment. People don't fold their shirt over a chair and step toward an ending they've already decided on. So what actually happened between 6 and 6:30 that morning, in the space between a keycard log and an empty deck chair? No one has ever been able to say. Not the FBI, not the Coast Guard, and not the family that has spent 27 years chasing tattoos on a stranger's shoulder and tourist photographs, hoping one of them turns out to be real. Somewhere tonight, another ship is pulling away from another dock. Somewhere on it, a family is falling asleep in a moving room, 20 feet from someone they love, comforted it by how close that feels. They don't know it yet. That distance, an open water, can happen in 30 minutes and never be measured again.